Hey guys, and welcome back to a Now for Something a Little Bit Different, episode 70. Guys, that's right, we made it to the big 70th episode. I don't know how, because it seems like just I blinked my eyes and it was on episode one. But there's been quite an evolution, and I'm pretty excited to be here. And of course, welcome back, Mr. Korean Cool, Mr. John Nance. Welcome back, buddy. It's good to see you.
Hey, what's up, homie? How's it going?
It's great to have you back, my friend. So today not only marks the 70th anniversary. To celebrate, I'm going to start by welcoming Mr. John Nance officially as my co-host. We've had a great time, and I've decided to have him on, and he's decided to come on. So it's pretty exciting. Welcome, buddy. I'm glad to officially make the announcement. Welcome to the channel.
I am honored and very thankful that you thought of me, and I'm looking forward to it. Right, I've already notified the local authorities, so
Yeah.
we'll be good.
Watch out. The authorities have been notified. No, I'm looking forward to it. We've had the opportunity so far to cover some really good stuff. We covered some great sci-fi stuff, 3 great sci-fi films, and today we figured we'd go from sci-fi to the world of horror. This month is unofficially, I've named it my Stephen Dorff month because the man doesn't get talked about enough. And we're going to celebrate Stephen Dorff month with 2 picks. Today's film, which you picked, which is a film from 1987, a really interesting film that I had actually only seen about a year ago. I hadn't seen this one in the 80s. And this is going back to
Wow.
1987. And this is the feature film debut from Mr. Stephen Dorff as a young child, called The Gate. And then later on in the month, we'll be talking about a little horror comedy heist film called Botched that came out in 2008. So before we get into any of the details of this film, why don't we ask you why you picked this particular film? What does this film have any kind of special significance to you? Is this a film that you loved as a child, or what's your
Yeah, it's
film?
so you mentioned a possibility of taking a look at Botched with Stephen Dorff, and um it's one of his later movies, of course. So I was like, oh wow, we want to talk about this. Let's talk about The Gate. And the reason why it popped up is because being an 80s kid, um we had just come back from Germany, so I was living with my aunt and uncle, Aunt Maxine and Uncle Bo. And of course, HBO, 87, we got back stateside about 86, I think. So it was on HBO. And I remember watching it as a young teen and kept coming on. And I kept watching it. And it kept always reminding me, like, dude, um, remember all those times you and your friends used to go hiking in the woods and you'd find all those creepy, holes or dead trunks? That's what this movie's about. Don't do that anymore. And ever since then, it's always stuck with me. It's another one of those movies. You know what I'm talking about, right, folks?
Yeah.
It comes on. You got to watch it because for a movie that came out in the 80s, and again being an 80s kid revisiting it, um not just the movie but just floods of other memories as kids, again adventuring in the woods, finding really creepy stuff, or doing stuff like again, how am I still alive with some of that stuff? But it's one of those. And Stephen Dorff, he's one of those interesting actors that I knew he dropped off my radar for quite a while, but then he pops up in so many different things that it's like, wow, he's still here. Yeah, some hits, a lot more misses, I think, but those hits, he really hits, and
No,
I
absolutely.
really enjoy him in a lot of his performances. So, seeing him as a kid who shared the same haircut as I did when he was portraying that age, that little bowl cut,
One of
yeah.
those now, these days, as you can tell, there's not
Oh,
a hairline there. That's why I wear the cap. When I can't afford to get the haircut every week. So sometimes I'm wearing the cap to hide the balding man's head. But I had that haircut too back in the day. Once
yeah.
upon a time, as they say, hair today, gone tomorrow.
Or was that old joke? Or you want to get a haircut? Yeah. Now I want to get them all cut. It's a cheesy joke. Anyway,
Yeah, no. What's interesting about him is what I like about him is he does pop up and stuff like so. I noticed the trend with him that most of the bigger profile films that he's in, like the big studio films, are usually supporting parts, and he'll pop up in stuff like Public Enemies, or more recently, because I told you my obsession with anything by like the guys that made Righteous Gemstones. He popped up in season 4. He plays like this villainous character, and of course, like everybody else in that show, he's ridiculous. So he pops up here and there. But what I found interesting is, and I don't quote me verbatim here, I think I have the quote written down somewhere, but basically he likes doing a lot of the smaller films. He likes doing films that are really character driven. And I think he's one of these actors. He got to a certain point in his career where he's not the DiCaprio or whoever the hot new actor is. Well, DiCaprio's not new, but you know what I mean? The $20 million paycheck actor, but he doesn't need to be. He's more interested in focusing on characters that are interesting and stories that are well story driven, you know?
Right.
And so I think a lot of the stuff you see on his filmography, especially if you look at like the last 20, 25 years, a lot of it is independent films. And like I said, the occasional studio thing where he has like a smaller part. I think he usually makes interesting choices. Like you said, some of them might be box office bombs, but I think part of the reason they're bombs is because some of these films are either direct to video, which is not the shame that it used to be. You know, like it used to be like this mark of shame if you were an actor, like you're getting a film that's getting direct to video. Now that's pretty commonplace. Or either direct to video or they're just getting like a limited release kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So, what was the I think the other bigger impact with brother had passed away, I believe 2016, 2017 or something like that. That kind of affected his mentality of things too, right? He understood that, you know, we're not here for a while. So I think one of his interviews, he just didn't want to do anything and everything. He just wants to do what piques his interest. I think, you know, to your point which is why he does these smaller bit parts or direct to video or direct to home or direct to streaming stuff now, because that's something he enjoys portraying.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, I've always looked at this like odd. Like obviously you do have the actors that might have $300 or $400 million in the bank, or maybe even 50 million. But realistically, no matter what kind of life you're living, even after you pay your agents, you pay your taxes, you pay your lawyers, and you pay all the people that are like part of your team, realistically, no human being, even if you like fancy shit, you don't need 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, $400 million. Like you can be selective, pick choices that are interesting. And if you have to take a pay cut, you can do it and still live a pretty damn good life, because I'm poor as shit and I'm getting by. So if someone told me, oh, I'm not the actor that's making that's worth the gross net worth is $50 million. I'm only worth 10 million. Well, guess what? You're still going to live the rest of your life pretty well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As long as you play it smart. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. As long as you're smart, you know, you don't need to have the house with, you know, 20 rooms and 10 bathrooms and 6 Lamborghini. You know what I mean? Like, and I think he's one of those guys that has that mentality. Take the time, cherry pick the scripts that are attractive, you know, that are character driven, you know.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
I definitely respect that. All right. So I guess at that point, why don't we move on to what we've been watching? What have you been watching this week?
Oh, so this week, wife and I, we finally wrapped up the Amazon series with Tom Hardy, Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, Mobland.
Nice.
Really enjoyed that series, 10 episodes. I think it's a well done watch. I love that intro music. It really adds something to a show, right? I think that's with a lot of stuff, movies, cartoons, TV shows, right? You know, you get some music behind it. It really pumps you up to want to watch it. The other thing, the wife picked up Mickey 17. So we finally watched that. I actually enjoyed it, and it's really weird to see. Oh God, what is his name?
Pattinson, right?
Yeah, something like, you know, Pat Patterson or whatever. You know, I'm sitting there looking at him and I'm hearing his character's voice, and I'm like, holy shit, that was Batman? What the hell? You know? And then outside of that, it's just been one of those weeks from work where it's just been hell. So it's been very limited in what I got to watch. But what I did watch, thoroughly enjoyed it. It was pretty good stuff.
That's awesome.
How about you? You?
So like yourself, man, I work for a school system and I do like custodial stuff. And this time of year, these fucking bastards, and I call them fucking bastards, elementary school, and it's the end of the year. So every time I blink my fucking eye, they've got an event that we've got to break down or set up, or they got some bullshit that we got to take care of on top of our normal responsibilities. Mind you, now teachers are also throwing shit away. They're purging shit and they're throwing parties because the lesson plans for the year are done at this point. The kids are coasting. So all it is, like, let's find another fun event. Let's throw another fucking party to these little fucking rotten bastards. So the rooms look like hell. They're overloading us with work. And of course, they're underpaying us because we live in America. And why would you pay a proper fair wage? So that's my rant of the day. I just have to get that out. But so also, I did not get a ton in. I tried to get some stuff in related to our man Dorff. So I did watch a couple films that I haven't seen by him. And then I did a rewatch of a film that I did see by him. I watched a film from 2008 called Felon. It's directed by a guy named Rick Roman Waugh. He's known for films like Snitch. He worked with Gerard Butler on films like Angel Has Fallen, Greenland, and Kandahar. So he's a big collaborator with Mr. Butler. Yeah. And basically, this movie is an interesting film. Stephen Dorff is like a family man. He has a construction business. One night, his house gets broken into by an intruder, and through self-defense, he chases the guy out to the front yard with a baseball bat. I guess he goes to aim for his knees, but the guy ducks, and he ends up slamming the guy in the head with a baseball bat. Well, guess what? The guy goes down, and he bleeds out. And Mr. Dorff, his character, is locked up and put in prison. And even with a plea deal, they tell him he's got at least 3 years. Well, he gets into prison, and guess what, guys? Prison life ain't pretty. It's not just, forget about just dropping the soap and worrying about that part of things. But what ends up happening is he realizes that he has to commit to a group in order to survive. And because he's white, unfortunately, he gets like caught up in this group of white supremacists. But meanwhile, he doesn't want to be a part of this group, but he's kind of stuck. He has to survive. Meanwhile, he's dealing with prison guards that unfortunately are corrupt, and they're kind of like forcing fights, and shit's just going really south. He does manage to make a friend, which is conveniently by our man, Val Kilmer, who manages to navigate the prison system without getting into too much trouble. And Val, of course, as usual, does a great job. And it's pretty much basically about him trying to navigate a corrupt prison system, navigate these gangs, and just get out on the other side. It was pretty good, man. It was a pretty good film. It had a really good, strong narrative. And it was one of these movies that nobody talked about. It also has actors like Sam Shepard in it, which is also great. So, yeah, no, it's definitely worth checking out. So I saw that, and then I followed up that with another film by Mr. Dorff that I had never seen called Steel, which came out in 2002. This is an action film. It's directed by a French name, who I'm going to fuck up right now, named Gerard Piers. I'm assuming I'm getting that right. He's known for an earlier film that he did that came out in 98 called Taxi. Now, they remade that film later on with Queen Latifah. And I've never seen that version. It just looked horrible. I remember seeing the trailer.
Oh, wait. Yeah, it was horrible. It was. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
This version, because I did sneak that in too, but I didn't write anything down about that. The original version, the French version, is very good. He followed that up. I guess that movie kind of gave him some street cred. And he made this movie Steel in 2002, also starring Mr. Stephen Dorff. He's playing like an extreme criminal, like into extreme sports. Think of like almost like a Point Break type character. But he's like robbing a bank on rollerblades, and he's doing.
Oh, wait, I think I remember that. Oh.
Like jumping out of airplanes and stuff. It's a goofy movie. It's not like an amazing movie. You kind of have to like remember when you're watching action movies. I always tell people, and I don't mean to offend action fans because I like a good action film. When you think of action films, you have to remember the action is the forefront. The narrative is not the forefront. Exactly. So like, I like a good action film, but I won't be able to talk action films like you or our mutual friend Troy, because I don't know enough about fight choreography. Instead, I'm like the kid drooling in the corner that goes, "Ooh, look at, he did the kick thing. He did the jump spin thing, you know, like
he kicked that face. Look at that. It's awesome."
Yeah, but I can't break down the mechanics of it because my brain doesn't work that way. I mean, I appreciate it and I can love it just like you guys, but I can't dissect it. I don't have that ability quite yet. I'm still a grasshopper learning in the ways. But exactly. One day I will earn my black belt, but no time soon. So anyway, basically, like I said, he's this career criminal. He has him and his hip buddies that go around doing these extreme burglaries, robberies, all these heists, and they think they're badass. What happens? A couple things happen. He meets Natasha Henstridge, who is a cop, not realizing she's a cop, and they end up hooking up. And of course, if we all know Natasha Henstridge from the '90s in particular, like movies like Species,
Species.
she's still marketing that Natasha Henstridge, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
She doesn't have a lot of
Oh yeah.
acting skill talent, but she damn fucking looks good naked. And needless to say, her and Mr. Dorff are going at it. Basically, what ends up happening is he ends up getting caught up in this whole scheme where he's getting blackmailed because somebody says, hey, I know who your identities are. I know you did this shit. Now you're going to work for me. And then I'll tell you when you're off the hook. So this movie becomes about now him being forced to work for this mysterious guy who's blackmailing him. Meanwhile, he's hooking up with Natasha Henstridge, who's a cop, and she's starting to get suspicious. And it's all about him, trying to get out of trouble, not get caught by Natasha Henstridge, and basically do extreme sports shit. Not a perfect movie, but if you can put your brain on hold, hit that pause button, and just remember to look at Natasha Henstridge and appreciate the stunts, you'll enjoy the hour and a half because it's only like an hour and a half. It's a quick movie. And like I said, it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be. It's actually, like I said, it's something good to have on in the background if you're playing like a game or something like that. Like I have my Switch, so sometimes I'll put something stupid that's fun on in the background. This is one of those type movies. So I saw that. Finally, I revisited a movie that I've actually wanted to talk about on here, and maybe someday I will. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's a movie that came out in 1990. I remember going back to Blockbuster back in the Blockbuster days and renting it on VHS. Never got a DVD or Blu-ray release here in America, but you can get a Region B version of it overseas. And it's a film called Entropy. It's directed by a guy named Phil Johanno. Now, most of you guys probably know him from a really cool movie from the 80s called 3 O'Clock High, which also came out in 87. He's worked with the band U2 on a lot of their music videos. He's worked on stuff like the film Gridiron Gang with The Rock in 2006, and a bunch of stuff like that. He never quite really got the respect I think he deserves as a director, but he's a pretty solid director. And this film is basically the story of a filmmaker, which is Stephen Dorff playing a guy named Jake Walsh. And Jake Walsh is a guy that's started his career doing music videos, actually working with Bono from U2, and he's making his first studio film. And he's trying to navigate the world of making your first studio film, dealing with execs breathing down your throat and telling you how you have to cut this or cut that, or you're behind schedule, but also trying to deal with a new romance. Right. So he's trying to navigate both those things, and both those things are going to shit. And it's pretty funny. It's got a great little narrative. You get a lot of good people in this. I forgot to write all the names down, but the one big name is Kelly MacDonald from Trainspotting. This is a couple of years after Trainspotting came out. Well, now she has like a huge career, obviously. Back then, her career was still in the baby stages. So she really wasn't a known name. You can also find this film on Tubi. So at the time when I bought it on DVD, because I don't think it got a Blu-ray release. It got a DVD release on Region B. Good old Tubi has it on there, but it's a solid little film. So I saw that. My plan was to rewatch all 4 John Wick movies because I wanted to go see Ballerina.
Right.
I got through the first one. I tried to watch the second one, and I watched it too late at night, and I fell asleep. And I haven't gotten around to the third or fourth. I've seen the third one because I love Mark Dacascos. I saw that in the theaters, but I haven't revisited it. And the fourth one, I never got around to seeing the fourth one. I saw Ballerina yesterday in the theaters. I thought it was pretty fun. Now, if you know the character from the movie, she pops up, I think, in the second and third movie, if I'm not mistaken. It's what you'd expect. An action movie about a girl whose parents were killed when she was a child, and she's out for revenge. It's the action fight sequences are pretty solid. The storyline is a little paper thin, but again, it's an action film, so I don't have high expectations. The only real criticism I would have of this movie is that they rely on, not to spoil too much, but they rely on Mr. Keanu Reeves' John Wick a little too much. He shows up in the beginning for 5 minutes in a cameo, which is fine. But then in the last half an hour, he shows up and he's just really there just to be like, hey, we got John Wick to kind of give this movie a little extra push. You know what I mean? Yeah. To kind of like to get some more asses in the seats. And when I went to see the film, there were a lot of asses in the seats, so it's probably going to do decent box office. I mean, I don't know how it's going to hold up to Lilo and Stitch because I hear that thing is still killing at the
Yeah,
box office.
it's still doing, man, it's yeah.
Um,
Steam engine. Yeah, holy cow.
but if you like action movies, and like I was telling you last week, I think what film I recommended. If you like action movies and you have one of these like AMC passes or Regal or whatever, it's a little over. It might be 2 hours. It's worth checking out. Otherwise, you probably can check it out. I'm sure it'll come to Peacock or Netflix or
Yeah.
one of these streaming services. So yeah, that was a little bit of what I watched. I also started to watch a movie with Stephen Dorff called Wheeler, which is he's playing like a country singer,
Mm.
guy trying to make it as a country singer. But I didn't get through the movie, so I don't want to talk too much about it. And that's also another film that you can find on Tubi as well. Yep, that's
Cool.
about what I watched. I'm surprised I was able to squeeze all that in because honestly, work like yourself, work was just absolutely insane this week. They're absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
These
I would
people,
say if you're like, oh my gosh, it's Steven
yeah. Well,
just passing out.
well, here's what happens. So I work a 2:30 to 10:30 shift. But like a lot of people, like when you get home from work, even if your body's tired, most
Yeah.
people can't fall asleep right away. So you end up doing that thing where you lie on the couch and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'll pop this in. And you get an hour in and you're like, oh, and then the sleepiness kicks in. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, exactly.
I try to watch stuff when I'm trying to fall asleep at night. I try to watch stuff that I don't care about if I miss, something. This one I was actually thinking, oh, I'm going to make it to this movie. It's only like an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and a half. The movie was good, what I saw of it, but I just, yeah, my body was saying, yeah, you're an old man. You're tired. It's time for you to pass out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, at this point, I guess we'll get into our behind the scenes in the film. So, The Gate came out May 15th, 1987. It, believe it or not, only had a budget of $2,500,000. But it actually grossed almost $14 million. It was like 13 million, I think, maybe 13
Yeah.
million and change, which isn't bad. And what's more interesting is this movie was going up against Ishtar, which I've never seen Ishtar. But I will say this much: you had Warren Beatty, you had Dustin Hoffman, and you had a film that only had had a budget of $55 million to make Ishtar. That only made $14 million. So that thing was neck and neck with this film, and that had a $55 million budget. So right off the get go, this film didn't do too bad for a little budget of $2,500,000. You know what I mean? That's not too bad when you look at
No,
the numbers.
that's a good
Uh,
return. It's a good
yeah,
return.
no, absolutely. It was an international co-production between Canada and the USA, and the film was released by New Century Vista Film Company. Apparently, in 1990, they made a sequel called The Gate 2, which I know you said you were. I remember sending you a text, and you sent me back a little lol thing. Like, I've never seen The Gate.
Yeah, it's interesting. I enjoy it still.
Yeah.
But it's one of those that if you didn't get hooked by the first one, I doubt you ever saw the second one. But to me, it's still one that you gotta pair them up, right? It's a buddy
Yeah.
buddy. You gotta watch them together, back to back, if you can.
I hear the character Terry comes back. The friend from what I read.
Yeah, Louis Tripp, who plays Terry, is actually the main character, the hero of the film, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
So what's also interesting is, believe it or not, back in 2011, our man Alex Winter from Bill and Ted's, who a lot of people don't realize he's a director in his own right, he was set to make a remake of this, but unfortunately, it was going to be like a 3D film back when 3D was like really big. Not that
Right.
it's not still relevant, but not probably as relevant. But it never hit production for whatever reason. So.
Right.
All right. So this was directed by a guy named Tibor, and I'm gonna fuck up your name, Tibor, so I apologize. Takakic, maybe. He's from Budapest, Hungary. He's known primarily for stuff like a film called Black Warrant, which came out in 2022, The Secret Ingredient, which came out in 2020. Believe it or not, if you remember not the reboot, but from the 90s, we go back to 96, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. He helped create that show and was actually offered the chance to work on Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master in '88, And he turned it down not because he wasn't interested in the film. I can make words, but because he didn't have enough time to prep. Because those films, even though back then they were practical effects, he said it had a lot of ambitious effects, and I guess whoever was set to direct it must have bailed at the last minute, and they wanted him to get
Yeah.
in there and get into it like within like 2 to 3 weeks. And he felt like he didn't have enough time to do that. He also worked on some other stuff. Like, people know that if you're a genre person, like I Madman. Obviously, he directed the Gate 2 sequel. He did Police Academy, the series. I didn't know they had a series for Police Academy. I remember there was a
You,
cartoon.
yeah, they had a TV series, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
It was that good.
It was,
And then he does stuff like Mega Snake in
yeah.
2007, Blowback, a bunch of stuff like that. Now, this is where it gets interesting. When we get into our writer, our writer,
Well, real quick.
oh,
So,
no,
so
of course.
yeah, so Tomoe Takax, he did do a lot of horror, off the wall stuff, but it's weird. He kind of like did a lot of horror, but he spent even more volume making Christmas themed TV shows and movies for like the Hallmark Channel. So it was like
Oh, okay.
one extreme to the other. And he got to work with some folks that our age, like Troy and I's. You're a fan of Mark Dacascos. So was the movie Redline with oh God, Black Fury, Rutger Hauer, which
Oh,
was
okay, nice.
pretty cool. But yeah, it was interesting to see that he started off with horror and with the Gate, and that because that made a lot of money off its initial investment. That I Madman, I got to go back and check it out. I know I watched it, but I got to go check that back out. And then just later on, as he got through his years, just mainly TV with Christmas, and again Mark Dacascos, he was the director on some of the episodes, The Crow, Stairway to Heaven, if you've ever seen that TV show. But yes, it was interesting to see his start, kind of start, pseudo start. Huh. It's Santa
Yeah, well,
with a knife, and he's going to kick somebody in the face. What's going on here?
sometimes you got to get those paychecks, man. You need that money. You need that
Yeah,
money.
I hear
Listen,
you. I hear you.
our mutual buddy Mike the Wildebeest. I know his wife works in the industry. I want to say accounting, and she's worked on some of those Hallmark because he's from Utah, and I think he said they've had a couple of those productions in Salt.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
so
awesome. That's
yeah, so some
awesome.
some interesting stuff. Well, when I get into the writing, this is okay. This is pretty interesting. I thought this was a really interesting piece of trivia. So the first draft of the script was actually written by Michael Nankin during, and he wrote that during a difficult time in his life. He was going through a bad divorce. He was unemployed, and he based it on a lot of stuff from his childhood, like basically like a lot of nightmares and a lot of shit from his childhood. He was supposed to actually he was attached to it at one point, and I think what happened was the producers came up to him and basically said, "Listen, I have good news and bad news." And he's like, "The good news is the film is going into production. Bad news is you're not going to be directing it." But he met Tibor and they had a little powwow and they were able to kind of get on the same page
Yep.
and really craft something that's unique and I'd like to call special. A couple other things, minor things about the script. Originally, Glenn and Al, the brother and sister, are two of our main characters. They were much more mischievous in the original version of the script. And in this version of the scripts, the demons unleashed hell on the entire town. They terrorized the entire town. So those are some other things. But I guess because the film ultimately ended up having a PG-13 rating, they wanted to try to dial into some of that like audience from maybe like the Lost Boys or the Gremlins. You
Yeah.
know, cover their bases, get more asses in seats. Because let's face it,
Well, that decision paid off, right?
yeah,
13 some plus million. Hey, it paid
yeah.
off.
Yeah, so I mean, it makes sense. I mean, listen, I'm torn when it comes to that stuff like that. I understand from a marketing perspective, you definitely want to make money. So I get that. On the same token, I'm always like the guy that's like, "Give me your dirty, dark secret. Bring in the
Yeah.
darkness. Bring the dark
Yeah.
dog."
It was good. And not to jump ahead a little bit, but
Yeah,
like Michael Nankin, he was like you said, yeah, he started off with a lot of, childhood memories and fears and stuff. And I think um to what we discussed in the last episode, right? Him and Takix collaborating, right? It's kind of that author auteur
yeah,
theory, right? Because they really delivered on it. Because you know, from his lows in his life, to doing what he's doing now, because apparently he's now a director for a lot of TV series, and I'm talking. I mean, folks, if you're a sci-fi geek like me, I mean, you've seen 2000, is it 2004? The 2000 reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, I
He
love it.
he
I love it.
he directed like 8 or 9 episodes of that. The Van Helsing TV show, recent one. Oh God, what's the newest one? Oh, excellent series. I loved it. Dark Winds, right?
Yeah,
About the Indian Reservation Police and the stuff they go through. It really good show. So, you know, it's really nice to see that, you know,
yeah,
he took a story, made it into a film about, you know, his childhood fears and where he was at to what he's doing now. It's like a complete 180, which is, you know, thank you. It's good
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he pops up in stuff like Eureka, which I've never seen, but I hear it's.
Eureka, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, the Terminator, that the series, again, I never saw the
Oh,
episode. The
Sarah
Sarah
Connor
Connor,
Chronicles.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and Heroes and a bunch of stuff. Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's managed to get some work as a director, and then like when it comes to the writing stuff, he obviously didn't have as much stuff. Surprisingly, he has more, I think, credits as a. I think he has more credits as a director than a writer. He's only done a handful of screenplays: American Gothic, Chicago Hope, that television series.
Yeah.
Obviously, he wrote the screenplay for The Gate 2, Ruskies, and then something called Midnight Madness.
Yeah.
But definitely a much fuller career as a director,
Yeah.
and a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff. Well,
A lot of
and what I
good
love
stuff.
about that is he you can tell his love for genre.
Yeah.
Just because if all you got to do is look at the stuff you mentioned, the stuff I mentioned, he definitely loves that genre of stuff. Which is,
Exactly.
I guess, moving on, I'll get into our cinematographer, which is a gentleman named Mr. Thomas Vamos. Also another gentleman from Budapest, Hungary. So maybe these guys are friends. I don't know.
Same village.
Yeah, same village. I didn't write down everything. I only wrote down a handful of things because there were a bunch of things that I didn't recognize at all. So, and I didn't want to try to
Yeah,
mispronounce everybody's fucking name.
yeah, no,
So,
I'm right there with you. He's one of those enigmas that I the only takeaway, and I'll let you get to it, is
no,
like
no, of course.
apparently The Gate was his only English film because everything else was international film that I've never heard of. I'm going to be checking it out later, but yeah, it's he's kind of an enigma.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it's he only did one other one I've never seen, but I've heard like it's like a weird cult movie, like a kids movie called The Peanut Butter Solution, which came out in '85. It's supposed
Yeah,
to be like this weird, like it's a kids movie, but it's supposed to be really, really weird. I've never seen it, but it's been floating around Tubi for a while. But other than
hmm.
that, everything else is like you said, smaller things that I can't pronounce. So because I can't pronounce it, you guys aren't here. I can only I can only embarrass myself when my butchering so much. Some level of dignity, even if it's only a very small level of dignity, I have to keep some level of dignity myself. Not a lot. I'm not asking for a lot. Uh, we get into our editing. We have a gentleman named Rit Wallace. Now he has worked on stuff like My Bloody Valentine, the original from '81. Murder in Space. Now, there's a name of a movie I want to see. I mean, how can you go wrong with Murder in Space? Iron Eagle 2. I love the Iron Eagle franchise.
Who
Uh,
doesn't?
I keep on waiting for them to do a box set, a Blu-ray box set.
I'm waiting for a Criterion Collection box set. It's
Exactly.
got to be coming. Got to be.
Listen, Vinegar Syndrome puts out some shit that they should genuinely be ashamed of, and people pay like $60 for it. So someone's got to fucking put out Iron Eagle. Moving on with our composers, we have two composers. We have a guy named Michael Honig. He's been on stuff like talk about cult movies. He did the stuff, not been in. He's composed films, scores for The Wrath from '86 with Mr. Charlie Sheen, The Blob, the remake in '88. Also, I Madman, Class of '99. And interestingly enough, this guy's even dabbled in some video games. He's worked on for us video game RPGers, the series Baldur's Gate. He worked on 3 games, 1998, 1990, and 2000. There were 3 Baldur's Gate games.
Oh yeah.
And he worked on all 3 of them. So,
And they were outstanding PC
oh, yeah.
games for you gamer D&D nerds like
Oh,
me.
yeah.
It's back in the day.
Back in
Um,
the day.
yeah, it was a great game. Yeah, Shadow was it Tales from the Sword Coast and Shadows of or something like that. Yeah, great video games.
Then also fellow composer, we have a gentleman named Mr. J. Peter Robinson. Now he's worked on Police Story with Jackie Chan, Return of the Living Dead 2 in 88, Cocktail in 88, Police Story 2, The Wizard, Wayne's World, Wonder Years, Encino Man, Rumble in the Bronx, Mr. Nice Guy, and Detroit Rock City. And that's only like the bigger names. He has a lot more on his
Yeah,
resume.
he's got a lot.
He's a rock
He's
star, man, this guy.
well, if you listen, if you're a fan of those movies, which I think a lot of us are, especially the Jackie Chan movies, and like you said, The Blob, Blind Fury, he was a
Yeah.
composer on there. He's got some chops. Him and Honing just really, man, to be that talented to compose music in your head like that and bring it forth, it's a lot of good stuff. He also did one, and this again because of the memories coming back. He Spawn animated series that was on HBO only. It was like a mature.
Oh, yeah, I
uh
have that on DVD, man. I
yeah,
bought it came out. I love that. Yeah, it's
yeah, you gotta check it out. Yeah, yeah, Honing and Robinson just, wow, when you look at the resume, holy crap.
yeah, no, it's good stuff. Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, normally, I don't normally deal with like effect. I don't really usually write down the effects or that kind of stuff. But this movie is back in the day when horror was all about the prosthetic makeups and effects. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that briefly. We have our prosthetic makeup creator is a gentleman named Mr. Craig Reardon, and he's another guy with a stacked resume. This guy, has done stuff like The Incredible Melting Man or The Incredible Man in 1977, Altered States, The Funhouse, American Werewolf in London, Poltergeist, Twilight Zone, the movie from '83, Dreamscape, The Goonies, Weird Science, Dick Tracy. If you're a Trekkie, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Wow, there you go. Wow, Wow West, Oz the Great and Powerful from 2013. Again, just a monster career right there.
Oh yeah.
And then another guy, special effects designer and special effects supervisor, Randall William Cook. He's done special effects on Gate 2 Trespassers, Subspecies, and Bloodlust Subspecies 3. But then when you look at his visual effects career, he's worked on The Thing, Ghostbusters, Fright Night, Poltergeist 2, I, Madman, Puppet Master 3, Dr. Mordred, all three of the Lord of the Ring live action films, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2012. Yeah. So another guy with a monster career. Now, this is something I picked up because I have the Lionsgate DVD release. I didn't pick up Vestron, apparently released a special edition Blu-ray, but they only had the region B, and I didn't want to spend like $40. So yeah. I have the Lionsgate DVD, which has a bunch of stuff on there. And they were talking, the two guys I was just talking about, and they said the effects they used to create the demons included stop motion, animation, and forced perspective. What they did was the actors playing the monsters wore rubber suits, and they were, believe it or not, kids. And they were all non-actors primarily, non-trained actors. And they were made to look smaller by using the camera. Basically, they positioned the camera relative to the camera and the human characters. They did, like, I guess, that forced perspective, kind of like, I think
yeah, it's like to use our cameras, it's like, here's the leg, and then here's the little demon, and that's how they shot it, which was genius, right? Because number one, little kids in demon suits, number one, little kids, and you tell them act like a demon and cause hell. Holy crap.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a playground. Okay. And it's a matter of corralling them, kind of keeping them tamed and not getting too out of control,
Exactly.
So that kind of like covers our main aspect of the behind the scenes people. At this point, I'm going to go a little bit into our cast, and I'm not going to focus on everybody. I'm mostly going to focus on like the main cast. I'm not going to go too in deep. I'm going to start with Stephen Dorff. He's playing the main character, Glenn, who's like a little kid, probably 8 to 10 years old, somewhere in that area. Now, Dorff was born in Atlanta, Georgia, to Nancy and Steve Dorff. A little bit about his family. Like you mentioned, his brother was a composer. And his dad, Steve Dorff Sr., was a composer as well. And he's worked on stuff like Honky Tonk Man, the TV show from the 80s, Spencer for Hire, Pink Cadillac with Clint Eastwood, the sci-fi show Alien Nation. So he kind of has a little bit of that family, I wouldn't say nepotism, but definitely some of that family background working in the industry. The Gate marked his first big entry into film. His career rose to prominence when he starred in a little film called Backbeat in '94. He was playing the role of Stuart Sutcliffe, which I guess was one of the original members of the Beatles. And Dorff's performance was met pretty well with the critics. Paul McCartney, in particular, saying, well, he wasn't in love with the film itself. He particularly thought Dorff did an amazing job. And that kind of propelled his career. That was like that aha moment, I guess you would say, where people are like, oh, this kid's really like got that special sauce, if you will, you know? And then what's interesting is from there, he started building his film career, but he'd also do TV stuff. He wasn't above doing stuff on television, and he'd pop up on stuff like Roseanne and Married with Children and a bunch of other things, which I have a lot of respect for, you know, because he's not just taking anything, but he's not afraid to turn his nose up. He's not turning his nose up at television work, because now, like when you look at television now, people have no problem with jumping on to doing television stuff. But back then, there were two camps. You either did TV work or you did film work. Very few actors were, especially if you had a film career, were going to go and jump into the world of TV work, because it was kind of looked at, it was kind of frowned upon, you know. And it's interesting to look at the industry and how that was back then. And now, let's face it, some of the best writing going on right now and directing is happening right in front of our eyes on television, on the streaming services, you know. And don't get me wrong, I love going to the movie theaters and seeing this stuff on the big screen. But, you know, if you want strong writing, there's a lot of it. You know, you just go to HBO Max or some of the other channels. Obviously, you have to filter through a ton of crap, but there is some really good, strong stuff being put out there, especially in regards to the narrative. So, absolutely. Real quickly, I guess I'll just go a little bit more into his film career. And he has a huge career. Like I said, he's been working since he was a kid. He did the cult movie SFW, which came out in '94. Stuff like I Shot Andy Warhol, which came out in '96. He worked with Stuart Gordon of Reanimator fame in a little movie called Space Truckers, which I love. It's such a stupid.
That was a freaking phenomenal movie. I love that movie.
Fun movie. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Of course, then we have a commercial movie like Blade in 1998. He pops up in that, you know.
And so everyone understands, there is only one Blade movie, and that's this Blade movie that we're talking about.
Apparently,
Wesley Snipes. Folks.
Apparently the other one got I don't know if it got canceled or it got pushed to the side or
it fell into the gate, and we'll just leave it at that. It
fell into the gate, the eternal hole. I think a couple movies pop out to me, and the next one I'm going to mention, because I love John Waters, Cecil B. Demented. If you haven't seen that, folks, watch Cecil B. Demented. He is absolutely wonderful, and that's a movie I definitely want to cover at some point, so I'm not going to give too much away on that. He pops up in little cameos like in Zoolander, the first film in 2001. Deuces Wild, again, something mainstream like World Trade Center with Oliver Stone. He has a nice little supporting role, you know. Then the film that we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks, Botched in 2007. The movie I also mentioned earlier, Felon in '08. Public Enemies in 2009. Did a film with Sofia Coppola called Somewhere, which came out in 2010. Iceman, which with Michael Shannon, which came out in 2012. The Motel Life, 2012. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface, 2017. There you go. True Detective. He popped up. I don't remember which season it was, but he popped up on a season of True Detective. The movie you were talking about earlier in the week, Gunslingers, which just came out this year with Nick Cage and Heather Graham. And the most recent thing I saw him in was The Righteous Gemstones, which he was on season 4, and he was fantastic.
I'm gonna have to throw a couple others, right? So
please do. I didn't want to cover. I didn't want to write. I would have been there for like an hour if I wrote the entire.
Oh yeah, no. These are just standouts to me because
I was going to ask you what your standouts were, so that worked out good.
You mentioned a couple of them, right? Judgment Night. With Cuba Gooding Jr. and Emilio Estevez. Space Truckers, again, love it. Blade. Fear.com, right? If you're a fan of Videodrome, I think you're really going to dig that movie.
Okay. Nice.
His cameo of all places in Bucky Larson with Nick Swartzen as his character was a porn star called Dick Shadow. It was great.
Fucking amazing. I love it.
Yeah. And I will tell you what, and this is where I love that he's done a lot more recent Westerns, but He plays the character of Ketchum in 2020 2021's Old Henry.
Oh, okay. Nice.
That Western, Old Henry with oh God, what's his name? Tim Blake Nelson. You'll know him from
Yeah.
Oh Brother, Art Wert Thou? Gopher Everett. Um, Playing Billy the Kid. He plays Ketchum.
Mhm.
That movie's holy crap. That movie was so good. Um, and those were a couple of, like I said, just had to mention those because, like every actor, there's hits and misses. But man, like I said, when he hits, he really he spanks a triple to a grand slam in those hits. It's
Yeah.
amazing to see where he's at.
He's interesting. So for me, he's an interesting actor because like he always has this look of intensity, but yet, even though he has this look of intensity, he also could be pretty damn charismatic.
Oh yeah,
Like if you look
he's
at Cecil B. Demented, like yeah, he's a badass, but while he's being a badass, he has this big shit-eating grin on his face. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, he's one of those folks we could hang out with, right?
Yeah,
And know that
yeah. No,
know that
absolutely.
we'll get along until I piss him off. Then who knows? So
Yeah, then he might fucking with you
yeah,
in the alley somewhere or something, but just don't get him to that point. So yeah, no, I think he's an interesting actor. I'm glad that like I said, I think he's a lot. To me, I think he's a lot. One of those actors. I can make words. I promise, guys. He's one of those actors. I feel like some people piss on his career because they've seen some of the bigger films and then they see like a ton of lesser films, and I think that's a disservice because he's not Eric Roberts. He's not just taking every freaking paycheck. He is just being a little more selective. And that's all it really boils down to. I know I touched on that in the beginning of the episode, but he's just being selective. And I think because of that, they're like, well, what happened to Stephen Dorff? And then we talk about a movie like Gunslingers for 2 seconds. And it's like, Gunslingers, but that's got Nick Cage and Heather Graham in 2025. And people are like, wow, like they
yeah,
feel like he disappeared off the face of the earth. And he's just being more
exactly.
careful with the films he's choosing, I
Yeah,
think.
he's
You know?
he's he's an actor's who knows what he wants to do
Yeah,
versus like you
pretty
said,
much.
just being chilly willy and hey, you want to do this movie? That's nice, and just taking the paycheck and running. It's just
Yeah,
it's
no. So
just
I think that's interesting for sure. The rest of the cast isn't quite as and I don't want to put anyone down. They're not their resume isn't quite as prestigious, I guess you would say. We have playing his sister Al, Christa Denton. She's like a teenage older sister. She's been in stuff like The Bad Seed, 8 Million Ways to Die with Jeff Bridges, which I actually covered on the channel with Jose and Justin. That's part of our Spotlight series. Mickey and Maud, and then she popped up on like TV stuff like Growing Pains in '86 to '87, and she does a great job in the role she has in this film. It's a shame she didn't like grow the career, and she didn't pan out to have bigger stuff in her career. But it kind of looks like, from what I could tell, there was only a handful of things, and it kind of ended, I think, like towards the end of the '80s, unfortunately.
yeah.
Um,
She is she's one of those actresses, especially in The Gate, where I think she did a really great job
yeah,
trying your '80s sister.
yeah.
And her career, I think, just I want to say that she left on her own accord and not
Oh,
because of
okay.
any other. That's what I want to say. I don't know what
Yeah,
what the real deal is, but she is truly one of those. If you ever try to do any research, where are they now? You're not going to find
disappeared off the face of the earth, kind of thing.
anything, right? So,
Yeah.
and she turned 18. What's that movie with Raquel Welch?
Hmm.
Some Scandal in a Small Town.
Okay.
She plays the daughter of Raquel Welch's character, and then like kind of like after that, she kind of like disappeared. Oh, I'm sorry, no, she did another like TV series, something of like Boggy Creek or something like something Creek.
Hmm.
But then she just like turned 18, and then I think she left on her own accord, and wherever she is now, if she just happens to tune in and she's doing research, hopefully she's doing well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's interesting. I'm going to sidebar for just a second, but you got people that are like still relevant in the industry, but they do everything's on their terms. Like you look at like somebody like Will Wheaton from Star Trek. At a certain point, like he acknowledges his parents were horrible people. They forced him into a career, and at a certain point, like he steps back. He stepped back, and now he's still doing stuff like he narrates a lot of books. He does conventions and stuff like that, but he doesn't really do too much in the acting world just because he never really wanted to be a part of it to begin with. He'll still pop up in cameos and stuff like that. And like I said, still does conventions to some degree, but he just made that decision to be like, you know what? I think I'm done. I think I'm going to take a
Yeah,
break and do the stuff I want to do. And if I feel like dabbing my toe into it again, dab my toe into it again,
yeah,
which you got to
absolutely.
respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next we have Lewis Tripp, who's playing Terry. That's Glenn's best friend. He's kind of like the oddball troublemaker, if you will, of the character, but I like him. He's mostly known for this film, The Gate 2, and then another cult movie that a lot of people love, which I still haven't seen. I'm kind of embarrassed that I haven't seen this one, Detroit Rock City, which came out in '99. So it's definitely, and the sad part is I really should watch that movie because I actually have one of my prized possessions is a mini poster of that movie autographed by Roger Corman. I
Oh no,
literally I have no excuse not to have seen this movie.
it is a moral imperative that you watch.
It absolutely is. It really is. So that's what he's known for. Now these next two characters only show.
Well, I'm
Oh no,
sorry.
no,
I got to back up because
no, please do.
I just had to put this out there. Louis Tripp, he's like Krista Denton, right? It's like he did the Gate 2. I think he did like a little bit part here, and then he Detroit Rock City, and then he like disappeared and couldn't find any information about him. But guess what? I found out that he is now more of a musician and writer, and he's living in Australia.
Oh, okay.
Another YouTuber, I'm going to say his name. I'm not trying to like push, but if you want to check him
Yeah.
out, check him out. YouTuber Kid Crusher. He's a heavy metal artist, composer, performer. And he interviewed Louis Tripp 4 years ago and
Oh,
kind of filled in a lot of gaps. And it was really awesome to see, why he's not around because in a nutshell, his philosophy was, he is kind of an introvert, kind of shy, kind of like Terry was a little bit, right? And he
mm,
only has selective, he doesn't let a lot of people in, right? He likes to do his own thing. And he's a musician, heavy metal. It was interesting because this relates to this movie. He was taking acting lessons with his sister.
oh, okay.
And the acting instructor, lesson, whatever, teacher, I guess lack of a better term,
Mm,
happened to know a agent and asked Louis to go do a audition,
mm.
and the audition was for the Gate. So
Oh,
he was a walk on,
mm,
did an audition, and to Louis Tripp's admission, he says it was a lot of luck
mm,
that he landed this role because he walked in, he had that matted like little mullet glasses, but they came down and said, we got to have you to it. And you mentioned the reboot. He actually talked to Alex Winter about the reboot and to one of the producers of that proposed reboot. And while he's not hard committing to it, in that interview, he said, but if they reach out and said, hey, do you want to have a bit part? He's like, he might do it. So it was really cool to see a child actor who had disappeared for a while kind of pop up in the most unusual way.
oh yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and I will say this too, right? I think he best summed it up, right? The Gate, and we'll mention this again. His interpretation of the Gate was, to your point, when you mentioned, the PG-13 rating, was this was kind of like an introductory horror film for kids, young teens, from the 10 to 14 year olds, the ages that they were playing. And when I watch it a second time, yeah, I watched it a second time this weekend. I saw that perspective, and then going back to Nankin's writing, to Takik's their vision of it was like, wow, they really did a bang up job of, man, this kind of encapsulates a lot of the things that kids probably feared back in the 80s. It was really cool. And
Oh yeah,
he ended
definitely.
up with Kid Crusher, and I'll finish up with this. He ended up with the guy he was interviewing, Kid Crusher, to make a video, a music video called Sacrifice, to which he kind of reprises his role as Terry
Oh no,
in
that's
the music
awesome.
video. So it was pretty awesome to see.
I'm gonna
So
look that. I'm gonna definitely look that up later on.
yeah,
I
shout
have to
out.
check it out.
Yeah,
That's
shout
awesome.
out. That was awesome.
So, all right, Kid Crusher, if you're listening to this, we gave you a shout out. So I expect a shout out to this video. I expect you to watch this Crusher. No, no, I'm teasing. Only two other actors I'm going to mention, and they're only in the film briefly, but mom and dad. Deborah Grover, she's been in stuff like Night Heat, My Secret Identity. If you're a nerd, you know My Secret Identity. Jerry O'Connell. That's how I knew Jerry
Oh
O'Connell.
yeah.
She was in the 1999 movie Dick. She was in Monk. Welcome to Mooseport. Yeah, stuff like that. Character actor mostly known for. And then Dad, we have Mr. Scott Denton, who's been also in stuff like Murder in Space, which I mentioned earlier, The Virgin Suicides, and a TV show called Due South. So that's a little bit about our cast. At this point, I will get into the script. But we open up the film and we see little 12-year-old Glenn. And we see him go into his house, and the house is completely abandoned. And then he goes into his backyard and he sees his tree fort. And it's struck by lightning, and it takes a big fall. From there, we cut to a scene where he hears a loud noise and he pops out of bed, and we realize it's a nightmare. And he goes down to his yard and he sees that the tree is on the ground and there's some people there, I guess, to get rid of it. Glenn's friend comes over, Terry, who we're introduced to. He's got like this, basically a metal. I look at Glenn's, Terry's a little bit older. I get like a metal kid from the 80s. That's the vibe. He's got a jacket with like a goblin on it, if I remember correctly. And I forget the name.
Oh, yeah. The jean jacket with the Killer Dwarfs, who was an actual.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
It was an actual band in I believe Toronto.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So we see the construction workers there, and they're removing this tree. Terry's looking. There's this big hole in the ground, and they see what I would call a rock, but the scientific word is geode, which is basically, for those that don't know, or an idiot like me, the word geode is a cool rock formation containing a hollow cavity lined with crystals. So they see that and they're like, hey, that thing could probably be worth a fortune. That's what Terry says. While they're in the process of getting that rock, somehow Glenn manages to catch a splinter in his hand, and it leaves blood on the rock. Ooh, the rock starts to glow. From there, we cut to a scene where basically Glenn is eating in the kitchen with his parents. We're introduced to his older teenage sister, Al, and their parents, are basically lecturing them like, hey, are you going to be okay for 3 days while we go away for the weekend? And of course, Al is like, oh, yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And Al, like most teenagers, as soon as the parents leave, decides to throw a party because, she's a teenager and mom and dad are away. So why not throw a party? So the whole high school's effectively there, or at least that's what it seems like. And while this is going on, we see Terry and Glenn break open the geode upstairs in Glenn's room. And of course, oddly enough, it leaves like a strange writing on a notepad. So this is the first sign that like, hey, maybe put this fucking rock back in the ground, you stupid kids. But it wouldn't be a horror movie if we did that. Instead, the boys read the writing because why not? What could happen? Nothing weird going on here.
Nothing ever happens when you read ancient script. Hello, Necronomicon.
Yeah, exactly. Perfectly safe. Of course, they get curious and they go downstairs to the party. Weirdly enough, they're playing a levitation game. Now, I'm a 50-year-old man, and I've seen a lot of teenagers that were older than me. I have an older sister that's 2 years older. I've never seen them play a levitation game, but they're playing a levitation game, and somehow they managed to convince Glenn to get involved in this levitation game. Everyone is shocked because Glenn magically levitates for real. So that freaks everybody in the party out, understandably so. Then Glenn goes upstairs to his bedroom and he starts seeing weird stuff. Like the wall starts stretching. And Terry sees an image of what we find out. We find out earlier in the film, I should have mentioned it, that his mom died the year before. And he's been having a rough time of it ever since. And he sees an image of his dead mom, but it's not really his dead mom. We find out that it's Glenn's dog, Angus, who apparently has died. So things are starting to get kind of weird here.
The next bit.
No, what's that?
Just a wee bit, right?
Yeah, just a wee bit on the weird side here. So the next day, Terry comes back over and he's like, hey, I got an idea. I got this heavy metal album with the lyrics based on that dark book. You really got to go with this one a little bit, folks. Remember, it's a 10 to 14-year-old kid's horror movie. You got to stretch the imagination just a tad bit here, that believability. If we can believe a kid got bit by a radioactive spider, then we can believe that, he thinks the heavy metal album is going to somehow magically cure all the problems.
Which, if you were a kid in the 80s, that was a thing that we actually did.
Yeah.
Listen, records backwards, right?
Yeah, we played backwards, and remember, that was as a kid in the '80s. That was back, if you were a D&D nerd, I don't know. Like if you played D&D, like parents were afraid that you were going to be like join a Satan cult or something like that.
Exactly.
My parents weren't extreme about it, but I remember like when I first started playing D&D, probably about maybe seventh or eighth grade, they were like a little bit concerned because they weren't like fanatics by any means, but they had heard like the whole like, oh, isn't D&D like Satanism or something like that?
Yeah.
And then I told them, no, it's not Satanism. Just look into it. They looked into it, and of course, they realized that was all a bunch of nonsense. But back in the 80s, there was a period of time where there was actually a famous book. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a famous book that actually got a lot of good reviews, believe it or not. That kind of was kind of like a red scare for parents in the 80s about how D&D would lead to all sorts of like occult and weird Satanism kind of stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, back to the story here. So yeah, Terry has this idea of, hey, we'll just play this heavy metal album and that'll solve all our problems effectively. He thinks that the hole in the backyard is a gateway to evil gods, and they opened it by accident. He suggests the only missing element is a sacrifice in the hole to summon the evil gods. So next scene, we see one of Al's friends accidentally dump the dead dog Angus into the hole, supposedly completing the summoning. Glenn and Terry read a passage while this is happening at the same time from the dark book, thinking they closed the hole. They're like, hey, we'll take responsibility. We open this dark hole. This will fix the problem. But instead, no, that does not happen, my friends. Instead, a swarm of moths shatter through Glenn's bedroom window, and Angus's corpse is found now on his bed, still dead.
Yeah.
Demonic arms try pulling Al under the bed. Glenn and Terry struggle to save her. They try to leave the house and are confronted by Glenn and Al's parents, but this time they're in demon form. So yeah, things start to escalate and get pretty crazy pretty quickly. Al is still surprisingly a little bit hesitant and not quite believing them at this point for some reason. Goes to inspect the yard, but sees it swarming with small demons. So at this point, this is where we get that forced introspective, and we get those kids in the rubber demon suits. And you see these little little demons like running around the hole. They're trying to come out and they're trying to get everybody.
It's like Morlocks if they were Oompa Loompas.
Yeah, exactly. Terry goes to retrieve the dark book, but it bursts into flames. So if things are going south further along, things are not getting better. Playing the heavy metal album did not do the trick. Getting desperate, they try to stop the creatures by reading the Bible. They read Psalms 59, and the hole begins to close. Because, the power of Jesus, that will solve all your problems, kids. You pray to Jesus Christ, and your problems are solved, demonic or otherwise. Terry slips and starts to fall in the hole, and he's attacked by the small demons before Al manages to save him. Terry finishes reading from the Bible, throwing it into the hole, and that causes a big explosion that appears to seal the hole. A wall breaks open when they get back inside, and a construction worker's corpse falls out of the wall. Now, this is another part where I have to course correct a little bit. Earlier in the story, Terry told Glenn this story about how supposedly in that house there was an accident, I think, and a construction worker got trapped in the wall.
The working guy.
Yeah, working guy. So, of course, this construction worker now, this falls out of the wall, and the worker pulls Terry into the wall, which seals up behind him. So it starts this movie, I will admit, even though it is geared towards the younger audience, they really do kind of heighten the horror. And there are some really like creepy moments in this film. Like I will say for a kid's horror film, it's not like, I'm trying to think of an example of a kid's horror movie that's kind of like on the tamer side because they know their audience. Where this film, I feel like they kind of push the limits. I mean, it's obviously not an R and it's not extreme horror, but for a film that's probably marketed between 10 and 14-year-old kids, I feel like they do push up the horror. I feel like they elevate it to as far as they can push it,
Yeah, again, they hit upon a lot of the fears that I think a lot of kids have, right? Something grabbing you from underneath the bed, dragging you under. Optical illusions, you're seeing shit coming out of the wall, dead things falling out of the wall. I think they did a pretty masterful job of again touching those kids' fears. It was genius on a lot of levels.
No, it really was. It really was. So Al's now attacked by the construction worker upstairs. He throws a stereo at. Oh no, she throws. Pardon me. She throws a stereo at him, and he disintegrates into dozens of little demons. So again, we get our little demon friends. Glenn, while this is all happening, Glenn goes to try to find his father's gun. And then this time, a demonic version of Terry appears, biting Glenn's hand. Al stabs Terry in the eye, and then Al and Glenn hide in the closet. But a construction worker breaks in, and this time he drags Al away. Glenn realizes that Terry and Al represent two human sacrifices that would fully open the gate. He also realizes he has a rocket that he gave Al for her birthday, and maybe he can shoot that at the demon and that'll stop it. And, of course, Glenn tries to light the rocket, but like in every scenario, when you want a pack of matches to light, they keep on blowing out. It's that typical, I can never get it when you need it. So the wind sucks Glenn into the foyer. And then this time we see the big bad of the film. We see a giant demon emerges. And the demon pats Glenn on the head and touches his hand before going back to the hole. Now Glenn goes to look at his hand, and we see this giant eye in the palm of his hand. Of course, the next logical thing to do, of course, is when you have a giant eye in your hand, is to stab it. So he stabs the eye, and struggling, he stumbles down the stairs. The demon returns. Glenn manages to shoot the rock in the demon, this time managing to make it explode, because this time he's able to get that rocket to fire right into him. Angus comes back, now alive, and then Al and Terry. And that's kind of our epilogue. Oh, and then we have one like brief moment where we see the kids worry about, oh man, mom and dad are going to come back. I wonder what they're going to think. And that's kind of like the epilogue of like how they wrap it up. And it makes sense for like, this type of horror and stuff like that in this kind of film. I did rush a little bit. I was trying to make sure I got the points, the main points of the story, and try to focus on the important things. But I tried to make sure I touch base on all the important moments. If I missed something, I apologize in advance. The movie is worth seeking out, guys. Definitely check it out on Tubi. I think it might even be on YouTube, perhaps, even possibly. So
I think so. There's a couple avenues. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the general story of the film. I definitely think, and I'll touch a little bit more in a few minutes, but I think if you're looking for a horror film that's got practical effects and like a fun film, you could do a hell of a lot worse than this one. I think it's definitely got a good performance by our cast, and especially for a first leading film, first feature film, I think Dorff really brings it.
Yeah,
I'm going to get more into my thoughts in a second. I want to hear more about you, and what your thoughts were on the film after you watched it, after these rewatches.
So The Gate, again, it's a nice tool to go back into a day where, when I wanted to watch something scary and enjoy it, I could. The Gate is one of those movies that, again, man, it really touches upon a lot of kids' fears. And I got to be honest, it probably still touches upon some, grown folks' fears, right? Again,
Oh,
I mean, you guys, if you're on here watching us, and I'm sure you've seen those videos of people getting scared where they're like filming under the bed, and all of a sudden
yeah.
they reach out and grab whoever, and they basically, poop the bed and all that good stuff. So it's just simple stuff like that. The movie, Stephen Dorff really, really hits it out of the park as being an 80s kid back in that day, with one exception, which was, I don't know about you, I don't know about the rest of the folks watching and listening, but like if we did something, there's no way in hell I was calling mom and dad. I know I was going to get my ass whooped. No,
Oh,
but he was insistent upon calling mom and dad. But the friendship between him and Terry, the relationship that Al had with Glenn and Terry, really gelled, really worked well. There wasn't like, there was no forced character interaction, right? There was just basically, Glenn, Terry, Al, and going through this stuff. From a horror perspective, yeah, today's stuff, yeah, there's more stuff, but I put this stuff, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but like put this movie against like Terrifier.
yeah,
I enjoy this movie with so much more,
yeah,
right? Because there's so much more to the movie besides the main story, right? Which was, we saw the phone melt, and then it's just like, oh my God, I remember having that phone. Oh my God, I remember having the same exact extension cord to
Yeah.
the headset. The model rockets, that was a big thing with some of my friends growing up on Fort Meade. Um, again, venturing through the woods or doing stuff that just crawling through sewers, sewer pipes and stuff, just stuff that you shouldn't be doing. And again, if you see a big old hole in your ground and it's steaming, you don't mess with it. You don't say crazy words that just happened on your etch a sketch. You don't do stuff like that, right? But they did. But they did.
Absolutely.
And I think, and again, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but you said it, the power of Christ compels you. Well, Terry really did it because he yeeted that Bible right at the hole and blew it up. It was like, it was so crazy to think, but it fits, right? It
Yeah.
fits as to, because he said, I don't know what the hell to do. So yeet, and then it blows up. Um, but then again, the practical effects, I think, is where I don't, if there's a documentary, I got to find it because like there's some reactions that Stephen Dorff had, especially with like the scenes with the working guy, right? I have to think okay, uh, Stephen, you're gonna do this, and this is your mark, and Louis, you're gonna be over here, and this is what's gonna happen, and then you're gonna say these lines without telling him, dude's gonna come to life and grab Terry, right? Because there's some reactions. He's just like it's great stuff. The practical effects with the demons, yeah, it was that forced perspective works a lot. You've been, folks who, again, you're watching, listening, you've experienced it before. You might not have ever known it, but best case in point, Indiana Jones Last Crusade, when he's taking his leap of faith, right? It's a forced perspective. The bridge actually exists, you just can't see it from your angle, right?
Yeah.
So these little demons, which, to the point, I don't know how many people had what was his name? Steve Armstrong, the little stretchy doll. Remember that?
Oh
The
yeah,
big
yeah,
stretchy
yeah.
doll.
I remember Steve Armstrong. Yeah,
When
absolutely.
Terry is like he's curb stomping this little demon and the way it's flailing around, it reminded me, no joke, we did that to our Steve Armstrong
That's
way back
awesome.
in the day, and that's what it looked like. It's just like flapping around and stuff.
If only Steve could talk. The
Right?
few stories he'd tell.
Right. I mean, and for a movie that's only like what was that, like 80 minutes long,
Yeah, it's a
you know,
easy breezy.
it's easy breezy. It's solid. It starts off with the premise, it starts off with the story, and it builds upon it and it builds upon it. Yeah, there's some crazy stuff, but again, you're not watching this for believability, documentary. It's just supposed to be entertaining,
Yeah.
and a little bit scary. To which, again, if you stop and think about it, like yeah, I'm 50 some plus years old. I am not a small guy. I can take care of myself. But if I walk past something and something grabbed my foot,
I'll be creeped out.
there's gonna be a little bit of pee. There might be a mud puddle, if you understand what I mean. Um, but it's just playing upon those fears. And
Yeah.
again, as a kid from the 80s, just seeing some of the scenery and riding the bike and just dumping the bike on the ground, going into a house. Yeah, the parties, and that was the big worry, right? Having done that a couple times, the worry was, man, do you think mom and dad are going to be mad? Well, yeah, shit. You see that house? It's gone. Bottom line was, this was a movie I loved rewatching. I
Yeah.
just simply, for not having watched it in such a long time, it was a fun time. It was an entertaining time, right?
Yeah.
And it really has me. And yeah, I'm gonna piss the wife off again because I'm gonna order a bunch more copies of The Gate and The Gate 2, because it's one of those movies I don't have in my collection. I thought I did, but I don't.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna have to, because Stephen Dorff really really brings a lot to the screen in terms of a kid. I mean, there's a scene where he's part of the levitation gag, right? But
Yeah.
it kind of goes awry, and he falls, he gets hurt, and he cries like we've seen other folks cry when we were that age, when something didn't go our way, or because of, in this case, pure embarrassment. So to go from the range of emotions, a kid would have. He really, really did a phenomenal job as a child actor. Whereas nowadays, some of these kid actors, some of them are decent, some of them are over the top, but Stephen Dorff was natural in that movie. You know,
Yeah.
Terry was natural in that movie. Christa Denton, again, I hope you're doing well, Krista, if you're watching, listening. Just so natural in the way things go.
Mm.
And, my final thought on this movie, I about busted a gut when one of Al's friends comes in and the hair. I don't remember this hairstyle in the 80s. When one of her friends has that, something from Mary hairstyle where the front of
Yeah,
her hair is like sticking up 8 inches. I about lost busted a gut laughing. It was so funny. This movie is fun. This movie has its moments. The score is great. The visual effects. Would it hold up to these times? I think so for what it is, right?
yeah,
A simple scary tale, right?
yeah.
I think it does. I'm a fan. I'm very appreciative of it, and again, now having seen Stephen Dorff,
Mm.
and if I have following him somewhat, again, I let it slip. But Stephen Dorff is one of those actors that I like him. I like him a
Yeah.
lot. And Louis Tripp, I'm glad I found some information about you, buddy. Hope you're doing well in Australia, mate. Yeah, this movie was great. I loved it.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, dude, I mean, I want to probably be a little shorter than you are just because a lot of what I would say is echoing what your thoughts, not stealing, but echoing a lot of your similar themes. I mean, really movie. I mean, it's one of those movies that I absolutely, as a kid, I would absolutely love it. I'm surprised I didn't find it when I was a kid. Um, and I can appreciate it now and really enjoy it for its pure entertainment value. You're really just getting a finely crafted little horror movie with everything that you'd want as a kid and even as an adult. You got the cool effects, you got characters that you care about and like, you got a story with some crazy shit going on. You're tackling the basics of any character that you care about, like the theme of good versus evil. You know what I mean? And it's just a good time. It's just a good time. It really is. And everybody just brings it.
Yeah,
Um, and,
absolutely.
and plus, you got great stuff. Like, there's a couple of good quotes. Like Al's, like, "You mean you guys were serious about that demon stuff?" You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or Terry, demons aren't going to just ring the doorbell. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
right.
you got like these little moments that stand out that really give it a little extra charm. And for those reasons alone, I think the film is worth seeking out. And like, really, you have no reason because even if you're not into physical media, guys, you can find it on Tubi very easily.
Yep.
It's been on there for a while. So I would say check this film out, guys. High,
Absolutely.
high, high recommendations. Um,
Absolutely.
so with that, I will announce our next film, which will come out on the weekend of, well, we're going to record it on the 22nd, probably come out shortly thereafter, which will be the 2008 film Botched, which again is an interesting film because this film is, and I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it's a horror film. It's a horror comedy, but it's also a heist film. So you're really packing it in, this film. So definitely check that out, guys. You can get this film. I found one place that has it, and that would be Hoopla. Now, Hoopla is a free app you can download. Oh, sorry, guys. Had to readjust my seat there. You can find Hoopla. You can download that for free. And Hoopla has books, comic books, and movies. You just need a library card. So you can watch Botched there. Besides that, I'm going to give a shout out to some podcasts that you guys should be listening to. Check out Not a Bomb with Troy and Brad. Every week they reevaluate films that were either a critical failure or a commercial failure. This week, what did they talk about? They talked about Megalopolis
Oh,
to celebrate their 5-year anniversary. So check them out. Of course, The Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema with Will and Sam. Every week they're picking up something new and interesting. Watch Skip Plus with Jose and Mike the Wildebeest. Mike the Wildebeest. I can make words, I promise. They're talking about the horror film Bring Her Back this week, which just released last week. So check them out. Raiders of the Podcast. They do a drive-in format where it's 2 films, and each week they're picking 2 interesting films to talk about. And then last but not least, Caliber 9 from Outer Space with Rob and Joe, who also do a feature and a B feature. And again, they're always talking about interesting films. So that wraps up today's episode, guys. Thanks you all for listening. A huge favor for all of you to ask. If you like the show, please leave a nice comment Don't leave a nice comment. Leave a mean comment. No, I'm kidding. No, leave a comment. Hit a like, subscribe, and if you have a second in your time, just share. Hit that share button. Share it to your social media, your Facebook, your Instagram, or let a friend know about it if you think they'll like it. Okay. So yeah, that's it for this week, guys. Happy 70th episode, and I look forward to seeing everybody soon.